This is Gemara Metziah, Daf Yomi Zayin. We're holding in the bottom of Tes Zayin Amid Beis. We're a few days ahead, Baruch Hashem. So when you listen to this will have been recorded a few days prior. Just two quick words. Number one, with Purim on the horizon, if anyone would like to share the schos of the Dafim on Tainis Esther, on Purim, on Shushan Purim, etc., please reach out. Number one. Number two is the dafim for the summer. Gemara Basra, dafim from Tammuz and Av as well are in the midst of being recorded. If anyone has any yard site or special occasion that they would like to partner in those dafim as well, please reach out before it is too late. So we pick it up. Tazayin Amid Beis, we're about 8 lines from the wide lines. The first word line is Zayir Lay at the 2 dots. So we continue in the discussion of Metziah Shtar Chayiv. Amar Rav Avu, Amar Rav Yechon, Metziah Shtar Chayiv, Chayiv. Excuse me. Metziah Shtar Chayiv Bashok, Aval Pisha Kasav by Henpik, Loy Yachziru Lebailim. So we continue, and if one is thinking, they'll realize that really this entire first parak has been one of Metziahs, one of finding items. And as much as we know that Elam Metziahs is famous for finding items, but we see the first parak over here, Shnayim Meichsim Betalis, and 2 people found an item. Okay, it also included Mekachu Memkar. For the past few days, we've been discussing finding Shtari Chayiv, finding documents of debt. So says the Gemara over here, a similar case. One finds a document in the shuk lying around. So says the Gemara, even though a henpik is written on it, even with such a certification, lo yachziru lebailim, you still do not return it. Now, what is a henpik? A henpik is just like we said. A henpik is a certification, is the stamp of Bezdin, proving that this is indeed a good document. So says Ravu in the name of Rav Yechon, if someone finds such a document, you still do not return it. Explains the Gemara, Pashit, obvious, in a case in which there is no henpik, that what? You don't return it. Why? Because then we have the concern, like we've been talking about the whole time, that maybe he wrote the document and didn't end up following through. So if you find in the middle of the street a document stating that Reuven owes Shimon $100, Reuven borrowed from Shimon $100, you don't return it because maybe the halva, the loan, never happened. But says the Gemara, 4 lines from the white lines, El afilu kasev by handpick, even if it was certified. Umayniu, and what is this? The mikuyam. What that means is that the document has been certified, verifying the eidim, the signatures that this happened. Still lo yachzir. Why? Because we are concerned that maybe the document was paid up. When a document is paid up, you should destroy it, you should rid yourself of it. True, but there is a concern of pirayin, which, connecting this back to yesterday's daf, arguing directly on the opinion of Shmuel. Shmuel says that we're not chayshish for pirayin. Over here, Rav Avuam, Rav Yechon says we are chayshish for pirayin. Ace Rav Yirmiyah, Rav Avu asks Rav Yirmiyah, and again, this is almost like an Ikad Diamri that a lot of the questions, rayos that we had on Shmuel, now we're going to come around to Rav Yechon, because Rav Yechon says we are yes chayshish for pirayin. We are concerned that maybe he did indeed pay back the loan. So Asir Rav Yirmiyah Rav Avua, Kol Ma'aseh Bezdin Arezeh Yachzir. Any Ma'aseh Bezdin you have to return. So what do we see? Clearly we're not concerned if returning Kol Ma'aseh Bezdin. Amar Le Yirmiyah Bri, like Kol Ma'aseh Bezdin Shavim. Not everything is equal. Ella Kigain Shehochzik Kafron. Not everything is equal. The Mishnah is talking about a case in which he's Hochzik Kafron, he's assumed to be a liar. Only in that case Does the Mishnah say that a Maisa Bezdin is returned? Because we don't trust him that he says he paid. However, in a normal case, we are chayshish for Birayin answers Rav Avua defending Rav Yechlan. Amar Rava mishum the hochsei kafram chada zimna sulei paraklal. Says Rav, I don't understand. This guy was once upon a time a liar. So now forever we never could believe him. Now forever we're not going to return the document, and he can never say that he paid. Elo amar Rava masnisan bishtar chaltasa v'adrachta uch the Rav Zera, same terrace like we saw yesterday for closure and Caesar documents. Like the opinion of Rav Zera, who said that in these cases there is no concern that they were paid, and therefore, but in a regular case halva, there is a concern that it paid, and therefore that's how we're going to answer up the discrepancy. Continues the Gemara, we mentioned the kafron. So the Gemara says, 2 lines to the bottom, the kafron. And regarding this liar that you mentioned, Hayel Vasali Adam, once it came to our hand name of a mill, so let's talk about it. Amru Loi. Says Rav Yuni in the name of Rav Nachman, we're going to differentiate within ways that Bezdin paskins. Amru Loi say tenloi. If Bezdin paskins that one has to pay, Shetzivoi, Rashi says, the guy's commanded to pay him. Then, as we turn over to Yudzayin Amar Aleph, if afterwards V'amar Parati Naman, if at a later date a question comes up whether this Dine Torah was adhered to or not, the guy says, listen, Bezdin told me to pay, I paid. What's the halacha? Says the Gemara, Naman, he's believed to say that he paid. Ba malve lichtoiv. If the malve, ba malve lichtoiv, if after the psak din happened, and what do they say? If the malve comes and asks to write what the psak was, ein kaisvin v'naistin lai. Bezdin does not write it and give it to him. Why? Because maybe he paid already. That's if Bezdin says, say 10 loy, go and give him. Continues the Gemara, but what if Bezdin says on the second line, Yudzayin Amar Aleph, chayiv atoli 10 loy, not say 10 loy, but Bezdin says you're obligated. V'amar, and after at a later date, the borrower says, parati einay namon. He's not believed. He's not believed. Why is he not believed? Because the fact that Bezdin said you're obligated doesn't mean you have to pay. It's almost not the final gavel that they didn't say, go and pay. Then yes, Kaisin will write for him this psak to collect the money. The Noisin and give it to him. Says the Gemara, this was on the bottom of Tezayin Bebeis, this was Rav Yosef Bar Minyumi, Amar Rav Nachman. Now we have a second lashon, 4 lines down. We have Rav Zvin Mishmeid Rav Nachman Amar. Bein say tenloi, whether he's told to go and give him. Bein chayev atalitin leiv Amar Parativ, he's now. Bamavalech dive ein kaisim in noistin loi. Eloi yikol efluge achehu deikol efluge. Says Rav Zvin, if you want to make a differentiation between the cases, it's not between say and tenloi or chayev atalitin loi, but rather amru loi say tenloi. If they say go and pay, v'amar, and he responds, parati, I paid. V'eidim I say shaloi para, and there are eidim that say he does not pay. Hochsei gavran loisem amun, he's considered to be a liar. Whereas that's only if Bezdin says go and pay. But if Bezdin says chayiv atolitin loi, and the same story ensues. V'amar, and he says parati. V'eidim I said eidim that's v'shloi para of a chaz v'amar parati. Lo yochsei gavran loisem amun my time. Classical. You just push him off. Bedina, he'll wait until the Rabbanan look into the din, and Mamish tell him to say 10 loy. And that's the 2 different Lashonos B'Shvei Rav Nachman in explaining the different psakim and Bezdin and how it plays out with the loiva claiming that he paid or not. Just one word over here. One word over here. Ve'edim eidin, I say shaloi para. How could Eidim testify that someone didn't pay? What, they were with him 24 hours a day? So Rashi in the third hour line says, "B'fanenu tavai lefraya lo alpi bezdin, v'loi parai hayol b'fneihem heiz laver alpi bezdin einay nemon shavloi parati shaloi be'edim." It's the opposite. That because he was made to make up this maze, he had the gall to make up such a story in front of Bezdin, he's only going to be believed if he actually has Eidim proving that which he said. And if not, then it's considered that he did not pay. Continues the Gemara about 15 lines down. The first word line is Bedini. Omar Rav Chanam Rav Yochanan. Mana libiyad chavalamein lachabiyad iklam. The classical case of Kaifer HaKol, that he denies owing him the money. Eidim testify that no, he does indeed owe him the money. Says the Gemara, V'chazav Amar Parati. And what happens? And then he says, oh, I paid. So again, originally he denies the story. Eidim come along. Eidim testify that he owes. And then he says, I paid. And he's clearly lying. Says the Gemara, I'll show you a story like such, like Rav Shavtai, Breid Ravaninis, Kasav La Likal say that he wrote to his daughter-in-law, Itzla Demilsa, the Ksubasa. He wrote a Itzla, a woolen garment as part of her Ksuba. The Kibla Le, and he accepted he's going to pay it. Irchas Ksuba. What happens is she lost her Ksuba. Amar lo. So Shabsai says to the Bezdin, Lahadam, the story never happened. But then what happened? Asuzadi v'amar, it did happen. V'amar in because of law. L'saif amar lo. Shabsai says, Parati, I paid. Asla kamed Rav Chia amar lei. Hochse kafron la'isa yitztalita. You're Hochse kafron. You originally denied. And then only after Eidim came along did you admit what's going on. Therefore, in such a scenario, you are a hochsik kafron. You are a verified liar in this case. Let's hochsik kafron loisai itzla. Let's just see two words of Rashi before we move on. Rashi adds in some critical details over here. Says Rashi, hochsik kafron loisai mam. She'ein ne'eman oid. You're no longer believed a love on it. Loimar, to say, Hechzarti, I paid it back. Uparativ, ad she'yipara be'edim, until you pay back with edim. So the Hochsei Kafram is going to be a necessity to have edim in order to pay back whenever you feel, whenever you want to pay back. Amar Ravavua. Amar, excuse me, not Amar Rav. Amar Rav Oven. 4 lines from the white lines. Let's just get it up over here. Here we go. Amar Rav Oven, Amar Rav Illa, Amar Rav Yochanan. Again, as you see, a lot of the same names. B'shem de Rav Yochanan, first cousin to the above. Hayachayev l'chaveiroi shvu. Now one's chayev mammon. One is chayev to his friend, the shvu. V'amar nishbati. V'edim idin oisai shaloi nishba. Again, mamish the same case. Here just it revolves around the shvua. We're on the first white line. Says Ravua, the aforementioned case is mistaber de Rav Alvin shenischayiv shvua bebezdin. This is only in a case in which Bezdin is obligating one to swear. However, in a case in which he came to a shvu on his own, Ne'eman, then he is Ne'eman to say that he made the shvu, even if Eidim said he did not. The reason is because he doesn't want to make another shvu. And therefore, the fact that he originally said, no, I didn't swear, doesn't show anything. The simple reason is, Bezdin didn't obligate him in this shvuah. So he didn't feel any reason to admit to it. Once they're eaten, then he says, oh, yeah, in a chanami. Then he comes along and he says that he swore. Meaning, in the same case, let's just play out the case. Someone's obligated a shvuah, and he says, I swore, and Eidim say he didn't swear. It's only Hochsei Kafron, says the Gemara, if this was a shvuah on Bezdin. But if this was a shvuah that one obligated himself, then he would indeed still have is in Naaman. As Rashi points out, Aval chayiv atzmai shvuah she'amar lo yeshba lecha v'tava beidim lo yavai acher kach amar nishbati Naaman. Aval gav dekami eidim v'chaye. Why? Because amar nishbati v'amar lo yesem ashlei chayveni bezdin. It's normal for one to say that I didn't do that which Bezdin didn't obligate me. El ani ba'atzmi v'einzu sarabanos v'charata el techiyah ba'ambo, just pushing him off, and that's the reason why in such a scenario he'll still have is ne'amanis. Continues the Gemara. They came back to Rav Avin and they told him what they heard from Rav Avua. The Rav Avua said it's only on a shvuah bezdin, on a shvuah on his own. Amrlo ananami bevezdin amri. It's benami Rav Avin Aril on Rav Yechanan. Hayachayv lechaver shvuah bevezdin. Vav nishva devei devinu esayshlo nishva. Hosei kafron loisay shvuah. Givaldik. Continues the Gemara. Amar Avasi. 6 lines into the white lines. Amar Rav Yechanan. Going full circle tells we started today because of Izmanai. So a document is found that was stamped by Bezdin certifying it, and it's written that very day was the day that it was written. Then Yasur Lebailam. Then you indeed have to return it to the owner. Explains the Gemara why. What are you concerned? You're concerned that they wrote it to make Alvan and it didn't happen yet. Hakaza by Hempik, it's certified. Oh, excuse me. If you're going to tell me that what, maybe he already paid it back. That's what's changing. Because the date on the document was the very day it's found, there's no more concern that maybe he paid it up because no one pays back on the same day that they borrow. You don't borrow $1,000 and on the same day pay it back, and therefore you could, yes, return such a document. Amr le Rav Zir the Ravasi. Mi Amr Rav Yechanan Achi. Rav Yechanan really say this 10 lines down. The first one in the white lines, first line is Asi. V'chiha at Hudamrim Mished Rav Yechanan. You said in the name of Rav Yechanan, Shtar Shalava Bayu Parai, a star that you borrow and you pay back. Einoi Chayzer, you never return. V'loi v'abai shekvar nimchal bai shibudai. Because the shibud was already done, says the Gemara. Emas, when is this? If you're going to say this is the day after on a different day, but not on the date of the actual shtar, my Irish muktam. It's a shtar muktam. It's a shtar with an early date, which you can never collect with anyways. It's not shtar chayv muktam. So what do we see from this price? So that you are to returning a document on the day that it was written. Alma pariyanish b'yayme. Clearly, people do pay back on that day. Says the Gemara. Amar Le responds Ravasi Mika Amina Deloi Para Klal. I never said you don't pay back at all. I said Deloi Shchichi Inchi De Pari B'yayme Kamina. It's not normal. But if you're going to tell me that in such a scenario that it for sure happened, it certainly is possible. Rav Kahana Amar comes like Rav Kahana with another shot. Says Rav Kahana, another reason why you could return a shtar the day that it was written, if you find it, we're talking about a case where the loiv has the money that he still owes the money. Achim, I remember, what's the chiddush, says the Gemara? I would have thought, what, says the Gemara? Maybe he really did pay. So, he said I didn't pay. You know why? Because he wants to borrow again. And he's nervous That's what she doesn't want to have to pay the sefer again. Meaning, the borrower says, "Yeah, I still owe him the money," thinking, "Okay, I'll give him back the shtar, and I'll go to him. I'll say, listen, you know I paid you, but borrow, lend me the money again, and this way you won't have to pay for the sefer to write up the document again." Kamash malon de imkein malve gufei lo shavak. If this is the case, the Malva would not allow him to reuse the document. Savar Shambi Rabbanan or Mavsidi Li. He's going to say, because the Rabbanim are going to hear that I'm reusing your star, they won't let me collect with it, and I'm going to lose. Says the Gemara, how is this different than the following Mishnah? Matzah shtari chayiv, im yesh b'machrais dechasim, lo yachzir. If you find the shtar chayiv with the chrais, you don't return it. V'okim l'kshachayim moida. And the reason is, even though he was maida, we're still afraid that it was written and it wasn't utilized till a latter date, and therefore, what's going to happen? Vasi, 7 lines to the bottom, limit of lekuchas minisan. V'atisha, you're going to come to collect with encumbered properties early. Shaloi kedin. So says the Gemara, we see that this case already happened. And we don't say we don't say what we just said a moment ago, that the Mav is not going to allow him. So that Svara is clearly wrong. Amri, they responded, no. Over there, there's a sizable amount of time that they could have collected. In the Noksiv. What's our case? Let's not forget who's written today. And therefore, the two cases are not comparable. We continue on the last line of Yudzayin Amar Aleph Amar Rav Chia bar Rav Amar Yechanan Toyin Achar Ma'aseh Bezdin. What is the case if after a Ma'aseh Bezdin, after Bezdin has obligated one to pay, if one says that, someone says that he paid a Ma'aseh Bezdin. Loi Amar Klom, as we turn over to Yudzayin Amar Beis, that is nothing. You can't claim on a Maisa Bezdin without Eidim, without anything stam, that you paid up. My taima, says the Gemara, what's the reason that such a claim is not believed on the top of Yudzayin Amud Beis? The simple reason being, call Maisa Bezdin, commanded Akishtar Biyadeh. A Maisa Bezdin, in its very nature, Biyadeh dummy, is like you're holding a star, and therefore you can't just claim that you paid. Rav Yechanan, what are you teaching us? That a Maisa Bezdin is equivalent to having a shtar, and therefore you can't claim that you were paid against him without Eidim. We have a Mishnah 4 lines down. If you bring out a get without a ksuba, then you have to collect the ksuba. What's the reason you collect the ksuba? The husband's claiming that he paid. You still are able to collect the ksuba because ksuba is a Maisa Bezdin. Amar Le responds, if I did not lift up a shar, you never have found a pearl underneath it. Meaning, that Mishnah you just quoted, you would not have known to apply to all cases of Maisa Bezdin. Now that I'm telling you that this applies to all Maisa Bezdin, now you can say, that's that case of Ksuba. But without my teaching, you would never have known that. Amar Abaye, my Marganisa. Says Abaye, what are you talking about? Really? Are you able to indeed even say the halacha that you're saying? This general halacha? Dilma, perhaps. Why are you telling me that you're collecting ksuba? Maybe we're talking about a place in which they do not write ksuba in the first place. They get hainu ksubasa, but maybe ksuba Meaning maybe you can't learn from here at all. You're telling me it's pashut from this case you learn Kol Ma'aseh Bezdin. Then anytime Bezdin says something, you have no nemanis against it. Maybe not. Maybe dafka specifically in this case of ksuba. Why? Because we're dealing with a case that they don't write in ksuba, and the get has the power of the ksuba. Only there, but a regular Ma'aseh Bezdin not. Says the Gemara, Hadar Rabbi was Chayzer La Milsa Damri. It's not good, that which I said. Why not? Because if you're telling me that we're talking about a place, they don't write Iksuba, if that's the case, this is a Ge'in Sugya, then what? Almana min Eirisin, B'mai Gavya. How can Almana from Eirisin collect? Says the Gemara on the first wide line, if only Irisin happened and then they get divorced. So Abaye is saying, how would she get the ksuba? Why? What's the question? Says Rashi, because the ksuba is only written when the marriage is consummated by the nisuin. So if there's a gerushin, if there's a divorce from Irisin, how do you collect the ksuba? Be'edei misas bal. When there's Aidin that the husband died. But the Yarshim of the husband could say, Valema Parati, we paid back. And Vachiti Machanam, and if you're going to say that the Yarshim is believed, what's the point of making this takana of the ksuba if the Yarshim will be believed? So must be that the Yarshim will not be believed. Why? Because it's a Ma'aseh Bezdin. Why? So we see you don't have an emanis against a Ma'aseh Bezdin. So we see that which we started off as saying that Kol Ma'aseh Bezdin commanded Akal Biyadeh is indeed proved from this Mishnah in Gittin. Amar Le on the second by line, one more kashan Abaye, Amle Markshisha Breder Rav Chisda Rav Ashi. Va'amanim in Eirisin the Islak Suba Minalan. 1 second, fundamental. How do we know that such an almana gets a ksuba? Ilimi hadid tanan from the Mishnah that says Nisarm Liskash Beimin Eirisin Beimin Asuin. Koives Akol. Says more, wait, maybe tell me the Kazal, maybe it's only where they wrote it. Remember them, what would the Chiddush be that if they wrote the Ksuba that you collect it? What's the Chiddush? Of course. Lafuk came with Rav Lazman as Zarya Damar Shaloi Kasav La. Elam and Asli Koin Rav Lazman as Zarya the Chiddush that even if you have a Ksuba, if you only did Eris and you can't collect it, because the Ksuba is only written al das to consummate the marriage with Nisuin, and if not, you don't collect it. Says the Gemara, no, it's Trichale. Dekanami. Says the Gemara, and Dekanami, I'll prove to you, Dekatani Goivis I call. So yeah, Bishlam de Kasala, they actually wrote the Ksuba behind the Tani Goivis I call. Aliyamr de like Kasavla. If they didn't actually write it down as we turn over to Yechazam and Aleph. My goyves I call. What does it mean? You collect everything. Mana Mesaimu de Isla. You don't get a call if the ksuba is not actually written, and you're collecting because of the Tanai, because of the Ma'aseh Bezdin. What do you collect? You should only get the classical 100 or 200. So we're gonna have to pause over here as we're out of time. But the next year we'll start with learning the first part, which will be finishing up to the Mishnah, which will be proving, again, this Gi'in Sugya, that an Almana Mina Irisin does indeed get her Ksuba, even if she doesn't actually have the paper, similar to our discussion of Kol Ma'aseh Bezdin could collect. Pick it up from here, B'siyata Dishmaya.